Доброго дня, шановні колеги.
Good afternoon, esteemed colleagues. We're continuing our working day. Now, we're going to talk on the topic crisis of values. How can Ukraine and the world help each other? Our speakers are going to be Bohdan Havrylyshyn, president of the Bohdan Havrylyshyn Foundation, Harry Jacobs, CEO of the World Academy of Art and Science, and Volodymyr Lavrenchuk, chairman of the board at Raiffeisen Bank Aval, member of the board of the directors of the Forum for Leading International Financial Institutions. Good afternoon. Ukrainian people are living through a very interesting transformation. For an ethnic country, from an ethnic country, it turned into polyethnic, but the Ukrainian nation. This is one transformation. The second transformation is as follows. The people of Ukraine adopted European values. And to me, maybe this is even more important because at Maidan, when they started to attack the people, they were offered the necessary service, for example, from among the people. Olga Bogomolets medical aid, other psychiatric aid, still other people provided educational or training aid, whatever. And they did it because of the feeling of responsibility for themselves when they are countrymen. And the same happens with those who volunteer to go to the front line. They risk their lives to defend their own country, their motherland. So what happened actually because of Maidan, because of all those happenings? There was some kind, which actually later with the aggression on the part of Russia, that people actually embarked on the road leading to another type of behavior in order to ensure their rights, which have been announced or declared in the Human Rights Declaration. And actually, people in the world over, they compete with each other, on different levels, between themselves, individual level, national level, whatever. It's a kind of severe competition sometimes. But here in Ukraine, we are a different story. Instead of demanding our rights, we experience the feeling of responsibility. Instead of, let's say, attacking something, we try to defend our rights. We have this kind of, let's say, a special conference on 25th of April this year. Why the world needs to make a transition to a new paradigm, and the role of Ukraine in this new paradigm, more gravitating to cooperation in this case. And among my foreign colleagues, one of them is here. My colleague is going to talk more about the other aspect of going over to a new paradigm. And we Ukrainians, we have to talk how we actually switch over to the new values, European values, which means that we have to proceed from our feeling of commitment, of our vision of the world, and fulfilling our task. That's it. I turn the mic to the next speaker. Thank you very much, Mr. Bogdan. You can actually pass the microphone over to the next speaker. Next speaker is Mr. Henry Jacobs. He is an American citizen. He is CEO of the World Academy of Art and Science. Actually, this person organizes and arranges all our actions and contributes to those. That's Jerry. If necessary, I can translate into Ukrainian. No, there is no need. We have the simultaneous interpreters. If you need the headphones or the, let's say, you can take those in the end of the audience here.
few words about the World Academy as a background. World Academy was founded in 1960 by eminent intellectuals from around the Western world at that time, including people like Albert Einstein and Bertrand Russell. We now are about 700 fellows from all over the world. The unique thing about the Academy is, unlike traditional academic organizations, we were set up to focus on global social problems from the very beginning. And we look at them in an integrated fashion. When we look at the world today, we see a period of unprecedented change, rapid change, and increasing complexity. And as a result of that, we face multidimensional social challenges at the global level. Those that we're all familiar with. We're still trying to recover from the recent financial crisis. Unemployment is an increasing problem in many countries around the world. We still have the persistence of poverty, more than 1 billion people, or 2 billion, depending on how you measure it. We have increasing instances of social unrest, civil war spreading in different parts of the world. Even 25 years after the end of the Cold War, we have still not come up with a really, truly global security system that meets the security needs of all countries. We still have nuclear weapons after all of this time. And as we all know, we have a serious ecological crisis that's going to be magnified in future. So the World Academy has been trying to look at these things at their root levels and looking for real solutions. And we've come to the conclusion that we have a fundamental problem at the level of even our intellectual understanding of the world today, that our very theories on which our practice of economy, practice of political science are based, are too limited to meet the complexity of the challenges we face today. And so we have a project which we call the New Paradigm Project. We've started out with a conference at the United Nations in Geneva 2 years ago and have been meeting in different forums around the world. This will be our 13th meeting, I believe, on Saturday in collaboration with the Havrylyshyn Foundation here. And it's particularly appropriate, we feel, to be coming to Ukraine at this point in time to look for new paradigm solutions. Because one of our convictions is that the solutions are not in practice today. There is no country that has really handled the problem of how do we provide opportunities for all our youth in future. So imitating what's being done in the West, imitating what's being done in the EU, which may be a lot that countries can learn from that, is not going to offer a real permanent solution. We have, around the world, we have a disconnect between our financial markets and the real economy. We have about $225 trillion in global financial assets, but probably not more than 20% of it is really going to create living standards and employment opportunities for people in the real world. So fundamentally, we need to change that system. I already mentioned security. In spite of all the progress we've made in the last few decades, we still don't have a viable system of global cooperative security which can provide for all countries. So our view, this conference that's coming up on Saturday is very important for us because, you know, it's often the case that the answers for the future don't come from the place where it's been practicing a long time. It comes from the places where you're looking for something new. Bohdan Havrylyshyn, who's a person I deeply admire, he's a member of the Board of Trustees of the World Academy. is really pioneering new activities here in Ukraine. We have set up an organization called the World University Consortium last year because we feel our universities themselves have to change. If we're going to have a new paradigm, we're going to need new types of leaders and we're going to need new types of education. And actually, Ukraine turns out to be an incubator for a new type of education, already being done, already taking youth here and sending them out for an experiential education where it's not just a question of a teacher teaching us what we need to know, but it's really active learning-based education, experience-based education, and most importantly, value-based education. For too long, our social sciences have tried to say, well, we're objective scientists and we don't pass value judgments. We will look at things with the scientific objectivity of a physicist or a botanist. But human society has to be value-based. It has to be based on values which will sustain human beings. And we need an educational system which gives us a value-based knowledge because values are the essential truths, the wisdom that we've gathered as humanity as to what makes for a successful society. So we come here not only to share with you the experiences of people from other countries and our research around the world. We come here to learn from what's happened. We've seen the power of people in action in this society to bring about a change at the political level. And now that change has to come at the level of education, at the level of education, in the level of economics, in the levels of how to create new types of entrepreneurial opportunities and so forth. So for us, this is a very exciting learning experience too. Thank you.
It sounds very promising. Ukraine to become an incubator for new paradigm for the world. I'm impressed very much on your comments, and I'd like to develop this statement further. Доброго ранку всім. Я насправді слухав дуже уважно.
Good afternoon, everyone. I listened to this introduction very attentively, and as a practicing banker, if you allow me saying that, from the markets, it was very interesting. I found it very interesting to hear about the new paradigm to be open for Ukraine and about how the Ukrainian example can be used for the benefit of the world. And I'd like to add my short comment on that. Obviously, in conditions of economic and financial crisis, the deep one that we have now, we all recognize the need for Ukraine to get assistance and advice as to how to go through this hard period. Very hard for all the segments of business environment and for all walks of the society. Still, this conference provides an opportunity of looking the developments in Ukraine from a new vantage point as regards particularly ways of overcoming the current crisis, what the new paradigm stands for, what are the criteria for it, and if this is happening or has happened, when and how it has happened. For me, this conference is a rather pragmatic event, despite theoretic things to be discussed. If we are to speak about the business environment that I hail from, I would like to add the three comments. First one is that in spite many analysts and experts speaking of change to new in favor of a new paradigm through the eyes of legal processes and new legislation to be adopted. This is the process that we have here at the moment. I'm still convinced that the process of lawmaking is not something very important at all, because I can assert that after this revolution of dignity in Ukraine, the business environment has been showing really great new way of tolerance toward corruption schemes and fair competition, specific privileges to companies with close contacts in the government. And there are some new shows of attitude that are really surprising, because it is about the change of values and about some core changes in core values that are really of importance for the existence of business. And these changes do not really require new legislation. It is about moral changes. And as a market participant, I'm proud to tell it publicly that really we have it now, and we've never had it before, this revolution. And really some new paradigm has been created throughout this revolution of dignity. Another yet important characteristic of the current business environment is that it is now very pragmatic, very earthly, if you want, unlike the previous revolutions of 2001, 2005. There are no expectations of any swift changes without personal contributions done by specific people. A great deal of people now strongly associate any changes for better with their own contributions, and this is an important characteristic of this new paradigm that we have now. There is also the third point. It is about the business environment, maybe not everyone in it, but most of business partners that I've contacted personally for the previous time, they share this responsibility for ongoing changes in Ukraine. To the extent that some business persons even terminated their contracts to go into the volunteer area of operation. And it really superseded by far all my expectations of how conscious business can get. I do hope these are changes that are not reversible. And this is a good reason for me to speak of a new paradigm being really formed now in Ukraine, also in business communities, in the business environment. Because of that, I really have high expectations of this conference. I think it will be a milestone, and it will be really a very good experience for Ukraine. Thank you. Thank you. If there are any closing remarks, you're free to deliver them, or we'll go into Q&A session. Let us switch to questions. Then the first is from the center.
So our topic here was values in Ukraine, and you might be familiar with Samuel Huntington theory of conflict, a clash of civilizations. Yeah, and Ukraine is on the edge of Western and Eastern civilization. Do you think it's possible for Ukraine to actually define which direction to go with values?
I did not get the end of your question. Yes, you mentioned Huntington, the clash of civilizations.
Yeah, but Ukraine is in the middle.
Yeah.
Which do you think it's possible for Ukraine to decide which direction to go?
There is a clash of civilization in this war, because it is, between Ukraine and Russia, is a clash of different civilizations. We have not been so different perhaps, but we are now certainly a very different civilization than, say, Russian Federation is. So it is a clash of civilizations.
Do you think Ukraine is already going to the West?
Ukraine is going.
Do you think Ukraine is already going towards Western values?
Well, Ukraine has already gone for the Western values. I mean, by the decision, by this Revolution Hidnosti, an immediate reaction against Yanukovych and his gang, if you like, for not signing the association agreement with the European Union. I mean, it was immediate. It actually, interesting enough, was also started actually by young people first. I mean, it started in Lviv and then it very quickly passed to Kyiv. I mean, that's when we actually moved, if you like. That was the first thing. And say, to me, particularly important was that it came, like Maidan in general, was mostly the young people. Now, fortunately, there are also older people actually who could provide, some guidance and knowledge, etc. But the real revolt and the fight for and the expression of what they were for, came really mostly from young people. That we are for European values, which, by the way, in much of Europe, they've kind of forgotten what they are. They're certainly not acting according to these values. So Ukraine, we did not mention it previously in our little speeches. Ukraine is actually sort of helping resuscitate some of these values in the Europe that we are here now fighting for and actually, giving our lives for or our health for. So now, what will be the outcome? No, I think Ukraine will come out healthier and stronger, because of this now, let's say, war, because of this clash. Healthier because it will be more conscious of what we are as a nation, as a country, and healthier and stronger precisely because we have gone for these new values. And here, again, must remind of this fact, the change that we have already acted according to this new paradigm that I've helped articulate. Let's put it there. I provided the list of obligations, among other things. So, I feel very optimistic about it. Now, of course, our Patriarch says that we'll win because the truth is with us and the God is with us. But we'll win also because we are stronger, we are morally stronger, we are stronger in having a very, very strong value roots, if you like now.
It's a very interesting question, and I'd like to respond to it. I'm not an expert on what's happening in Ukraine, but I'd like to respond to it from the outside, because in looking at a new paradigm, I come from California. I grew up there during the hippie days when freedom of creativity was the thing. I moved to India, my wife and I moved to India, so we've seen a very different culture there. I would posit the whole thing a little differently, because I don't think the question is just moving from one set of civilization values to the Western. I hope it's not that. Because having lived in the West, grown up in the West, and know all the problems that we have in the West, if not material problems, social and psychological problems, I've come to really recognize that there's another side to the story. That neither of these, quote, civilizations has had the answer. There is a human need for security, for belonging, for a solid collective existence, and there is a very essential need for freedom and innovation and creativity. And unfortunately, up until now, our models have been one extreme or the other. Security without freedom, or freedom without security and without social cohesion. And we need a new model. And I have a great faith that Ukraine and the countries that have been in the middle line between these two are going to be the birthplace and incubators for a new civilization. That's a big word, maybe, but for an integration of these two. And I work a lot with people in the region. I've been in all of the former countries of this region, and I see here a certain, pardon me, humaneness that I don't find in the place where I grew up. And I'm looking, the world is still looking for something better. So by all means, learn from the best that we have to offer, but look to the best that's been there in your roots and find a way to synthesize it in a new way that'll not only work for Ukraine, but will be a model and an inspiration for other countries as well.
I'd like to provide my comment to your question, which I translate in this way. So I believe that Ukrainians recognize their values during this very tough period of time, and recognize them that they're basically based on worldwide values, which are based on transparency, commitment to community, cooperation. And that's, I think, the answer to the question. So I don't think that we'd like to import values from the West, because just often it's translated in the way that we'd like to go to Western values. I think it's okay to look at these values, but to recognize our values, and we are happy. I'm lucky to be in this process as well, each individuals. Recognizing this, I see more and more that our values are very deep, based on worldwide values. Humanitarian, and that's where we are. Thank you.
Yeah, those are some great answers. Thank you very much. I enjoyed it. Якщо є якісь запитання або уточнення до нашого...
Please, if any other comments, questions to our speakers. If no, then you can talk to them after the briefing, and let me thank all the esteemed speakers for this very nice input on humaneness aspects in our tough times. Speaking about the conference, now you have better understanding of why have we announced the conference. I'd like to say that that it is really important for us to see the world helping us. The world is giving us silver, and we can repay its kindness by giving it back in gold. We, the Ukrainians, are really capable of making the world richer with our input. Because we can further develop our sense of community trust, community pride, and we are really capable of standing against any crisis. And as my Ukrainian colleague mentioned it correctly, I do hope that Ukraine can come up with a new model. And it's still more important that these were the words of an already seasoned business person, not just a young guy, but a very real-looking, very strict business person. And I think it's really of importance to see these fundamental changes. Let me welcome you again to the conference that we have announced. It will be beneficial for the academy, for the fund. And by the way, they're learning from the experience of efficient management from other countries without copying these experiences, blindly copying them.
They learned a lot, like a decree, a kind of a decree. But the last phrase in that article, which was written by that group, what they started there was as follows: we are not going to be operators of the Swedish system in Ukraine. We are going to create our own system and be main players or actors within that system. So thanks a lot that you invited us for an invitation to take part in this press conference. Thanks to my colleagues, and see you again. Thanks a lot to you. Much success to you during the upcoming conference, and we hope that Ukraine will change for the better in the nearest future. And next